Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining us today for this webinar, How to Plan a Mission Trip. So we're really excited that you're here with us, whether you are coming on a trip with YouthWorks in 2026, or maybe you're planning your own. No matter what, we really hope that we can add some value to your life today and really help you simplify your mission trip planning process. So my name is Heidi Mitchell, and I'm the Director of Communications here at YouthWorks, and I'm going to get us started today. So I'm going to share just a little bit about who we are, just in case you are not familiar with us. But our whole goal is really to see a world where Christ's followers are known for hospitality, service, and justice. That's our heartbeat. And the way that we do that is we create experiences that empower this generation to love their neighbors. So some things that really matter to us are showing up relationships first, always serving respectfully, providing real world experience, and also being resource ready. We really want to resource leaders with everything that they need, but in a way that feels simple but full of substance. And we have a few different YouthWorks experiences and the way that we do that. So we have our prepackaged mission trips. These trips happen in the summer and they're designed for middle school and high school students. We have 15 locations across the United States where you can take a prepackaged trip. We also have custom mission trips, which are exactly as they sound. They can be completely customized. You can bring any age group. We have 30 locations and you can do this year round. So a lot of people end up doing fall retreats or spring break trips, but really any time of year is available for custom mission trips. We also do summer internships for young adults across those 15 locations where we really want to just invest in this generation of leaders that are coming up. And brand new for 2026, if you haven't heard yet, we're doing something called service learning trips. These are designed for high schoolers and young adults, college-age students. They're happening in the spring break and the summer. And these trips are really where you get to have an immersive learning experience with an expert guide and do a deep dive on a topic of racial justice, immigration, or food insecurity. You can choose. And so in addition to the immersive learning, you also have some hands-on service experience as well. So those are the different trips that we offer and the way that you can kind of connect with us and serve with us. So with that, I'm going to just go ahead and hand it over to Carlos and Barry.
Hey guys, I'm Carlos. Thanks for jumping in. I am president here at YouthWorks. Been here a few years and live in Dallas-Fort Worth area. I'm in Arlington, right around the corner from Cowboy Stadium. So go Cowboys. I have been on and led different types of trips all over the place, being a youth pastor and being at the local church in different roles. So I know that my own spiritual and leadership development and formation very much so happened in the process of mission trips, which is why I'm here and why I like talking about this, because I want to make sure that everybody is equipped and has some tools to be able to take young people on transformative experiences like this. So that's a little bit about me. Barry, how about you?
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. My name is Barry Foster. I am the Senior Director of Mobilization here at YouthWorks. I've been a part of the full-time team now for about 11 and a half years. Summer 2026 will be my 15th summer part of YouthWorks, and really love being here. Fun fact about me, I was also a trip leader and worked with a church here in the Twin Cities area for 10 years and led YouthWorks trips with students. And I also went on YouthWorks trips as a high school student as well. So have seen YouthWorks through many different facets. But I work with our team of people who are working with our churches to help support our churches as they're getting registered as well as planning their trips. So really excited to share some helpful tips here today.
Thanks, Barry. When we talk about how to plan a mission trip, I think we actually need to start and take a step back and think about why we're having a mission trip in the first place. So maybe you guys have seen or heard of Simon Sinek. He has a super popular TED Talk from back in the day in a book called Start with the Why. But he does this circle, and I think it's really helpful even as we think about how we frame, how we're going to go about planning something like a mission trip or a service trip, because everything that you do and all the logistics of service projects and transportation and safety and all the things that you have to think through, they are really determined by the why. Like, why is it that you're going on the trip? And so if you don't have first clarity around the purpose of your trip, around your theology as it pertains maybe to mission or why you're doing an experience like this, or really have that starting foundation, it's going to be difficult to know what to do or to know where to go or how to do things like transportation. So you really have to start there. And so as we have this conversation, I want to start us with helping you or making sure that you have clarity around your why, and then thinking about your strategy. If you zoom out a little bit more in your how is it that you're going to go about planning this trip? And then you can kind of get to, okay, what are all the details? What are the logistics? What are the specific tasks that I need to do? And so as you're thinking about clarity on your why, I know that different churches, different organizations, all have maybe different reasons of why you're going on a mission trip. And I want to say that that's okay. I put a few examples on this slide of different things that I've heard or maybe things that I've said. This is not meant to be these are the only reasons to go on a mission trip. I just want you to know that if I went and asked all of you, why do you want to go on a mission trip? And I did that to 6,000, 7,000 people that would come on mission trip, I'm not going to get exactly the same answer every time. And there's going to be a different emphasis with different leaders and different churches on why they're engaging on an experience like that. My main point here is that for you to start the planning process, you should have clarity around yours and your church's why as to why you're doing this trip before you jump into all the details. Understand why it is you're even doing this. Maybe it's because you want to spread the gospel. Maybe it's because you want to go and verbally proclaim the good news of Jesus to others or help a local church in a different place do that. Or maybe it is that you want to go to another country and you want to reach people in communities or in populations who have never heard the name of Jesus before. That's a reason people go on mission trips. Another reason is to give cross-cultural experience and training. I put missions in quotation mark because sometimes that cross-cultural element is why we say missions. And not mission, and thinking about like the mission of God. So a lot of times that has to do with cross-cultural experiences, or some of your churches or denominations might think about it in that way. Another reason is you just want to serve. You want to serve others. You want to meet people's tangible needs. You know that there are people who have needs, and as the body of Christ, we are to love our neighbors and go and meet those needs and show them the love of Jesus in very practical, tangible ways. Or maybe your why is about your group and wanting them to grow closer together in community. And you know that community is best formed when groups of people get out of their comfort zone and they do something hard and they engage in mission together. That grows the group closer together. Or worship and discipleship. You know that an experience like a mission trip will help students grow closer to God. You know that it is a formative experience as they do that. Again, all of these are good reasons, but my guess is that anybody watching this, any of you now, you're probably going to lean towards one of these or maybe something else as like the primary reason or the primary emphasis for going on a trip. And that will have trickle downs on how you form or your strategy of how you go about planning and the specifics when it goes to where you're going to go, how you're going to get there, how much is it going to cost. There's implications to each of these whys as we start getting into the details. So after you have clarity around your why, I would even encourage you to write down, like, what is your why? Why are you interested in a mission trip? Have clarity around that. Then you can start thinking about your strategy. And the biggest piece of the strategy is figuring out, are you going to plan a mission trip for yourself? You're going to do it yourself? That should be DIY. But anyway, DIY, or are you going to use a mission org like YouthWorks, or like a number of great other organizations that plan experiences like this? When you think about the strategy or the way you're going to go about planning this trip, the two kind of ends of this spectrum is, are you going to prioritize controlling aspects of your trip or controlling as many aspects of your trip as you can? Or are you going to prioritize having the most time and money capacity to do the things that you want to do? So control versus capacity. I want to say these two ends of the spectrum, neither of them are bad. There's not a right or wrong answer here. There are very good reasons why you would want to control a lot of aspects of your trip. If you have a very specific why behind your trip. Maybe you want to support a local church plant that your church has sent out and planted. Like, you're going to need to control more aspects of that trip and experience. Or maybe you have very particular needs of your group or of your church, or very particular emphasis you want to have, or very specific dates that you need to do, or a very specific budget that you need to make sure that this trip falls under. You're going to need to control more aspects. But the more that you are going to control the trip, the more time, the more capacity it's going to take from you, likely both financially and in your time. And so if you're on maybe on the other end of that spectrum, a lot of you don't necessarily have the time or the budget or the network of relationships or partnerships to pull off something like a mission trip by yourself. And so you need, or it would be very helpful for you to have another organization to come alongside of you and help, maybe in forming, service partnerships and relationships, helping craft a schedule, simplifying the budget by putting a lot of that into costs. Those things save you time. They can save you money when you can find other partners. That way you can spend more of your own capacity focusing on things like relationships with your students, discipleship, just jumping in and serving, and what happens before and after the trip a little bit more than the logistics. Every church has a different level of time and financial capacity. And so, your why and also just your resources and time will determine kind of what end of this spectrum maybe you fall into. So in that, Heidi showed earlier the different types of experiences that YouthWorks has. So I put those on this spectrum because even our experiences are different places on this. Our prepackaged trips, we call them prepackaged for a reason, because they're going to give you the most capacity back. Like, YouthWorks is handling the more logistics on our prepackaged trips than we are our other experiences, because lodging is included, food is included, the service projects are included. We have community hosts there on site helping you through that experience. As you move towards the control side, our service learning is a little bit different. There's going to be an expert guide and a host, but not as much on-site support. Meals are done a little bit differently there. There's a little bit more discussion and kind of open processing time in those experiences. And then with custom, we're not providing really any content. So on our custom trips, content comes from you, the leader. And so you'll develop what you want to teach, the discipleship resources that maybe you give to your students, and food is not included in our custom as well. So you see that it's moving more towards that, doing it yourself. Or maybe you go and you plan all of that yourself, or you find existing partnerships that your own church has and create a trip around that. So once you have this decided and kind of the route you're going to go in your planning process, then you can start getting into more of the logistics. The first, if we move out to the what in logistics, is, okay, you're going to do a mission trip. Now we need to tell people about it. We need to actually market this mission trip. And when you start this process, you really need to have buy-in from 4 different audiences or groups of people. One, the rest of your church leadership. Is this just something you want to do, or is your church leadership bought into your group going on a trip like this? You're going to need to get buy-in from parents. They're going to be the ones entrusting maybe you and other adult leaders. Maybe some other parents are coming along too, but they need to buy in to this mission trip as well. So you're going to need to communicate and market to them. Adult leaders. It's likely, and it shouldn't be, just you taking a bunch of students on a trip. I mean, we have ratios and stuff on ours that we need to abide by. You need volunteers and other leaders to come on this. They're going to need to buy in. They're going to need to sign up and be a part of this as well. And then, of course, the individual students. You need to get students excited to sign up and buy into this so that they come and understand the value that this mission trip has and the difference that they can make even at their age. So when you're communicating to these different audiences, there are 2 different kind of big buckets of marketing. I like to call these a ground attack and an air attack. So a ground attack is the ways that you're going to communicate with those audiences really on a more individualized level. So individual conversations. You're going to get the most people likely to sign up for a mission trip if you go have individual conversations with students. Go have individual conversations with parents and with your church leadership. Send them individual text messages and tell them, why this is important and why you want them to come. Talk to them on the phone. That's a form of marketing. It's just more individualized. It's personal. That's a ground attack. I would argue that your ground attack is the most important form of your marketing. Somebody is going to be much more likely to buy in and to want to come on your mission trip if you've had individual conversations with them rather than just relying on something like social media or mass emails. Those things are important. I refer to those as air attack. I just don't think they're going to be as effective as creative buying as your marketing ground attack is. So when it comes to mass marketing, you can think of that air attack as keeping the mission trip and what's happening in front of people. And so you want to have those. I just wouldn't rely on them. Still post it on social media. Keep it in front of people, the dates and what you're going to be doing. Make announcements at your worship services, at your youth services of when this is happening. That keeps everybody on the same page with the details. Send emails. You still need to do those, but you need to be having ongoing, continual conversations with people about your trip as well. So now that we've talked about kind of recruiting and getting buy-in from those different audiences, you can start thinking about the other logistics, and Barry is way better at those. So I'm going to pass it over to Barry to start talking about what's on your mind, the money.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Carlos. So one of the big important things to do for your mission trip is to create a budget. And so I'm guessing probably most of you didn't get into ministry because you love Excel spreadsheets or numbers. You got into ministry of the relationships students and whatnot. So hopefully I can offer some real tangible advice that you can take away from this. So where do you start creating a budget? First, one of the important things that you can think about is your fixed costs. So these are going to be don't necessarily change based on the number of people that you're bringing. So things like your rental vans, potentially costs. So these are things that change based on the number of people you're bringing. So food, activity fees, and so start to think through some of those in your head. If you are participating in a YouthWorks trip, like a fixed cost potentially could be housing, but that housing fee for a YouthWorks trip is included in your participant fee, so you don't have to necessarily think about that. But I would encourage you to make a few different versions of your up with like a best case scenario of, hey, if we have this many students sign up and go, this is what we think our costs will be. Maybe a more conservative or likely scenario in the worst case of, hey, if I only have a few students, rental van vehicle cost broken down between a few students versus many students might look a little bit different. Other things to think about when you're creating a budget is, what are you going to charge your students? If you go on a YouthWorks trips, we have a fee per participant, and so you'll likely charge your students that amount, but you might need to add that to cover things like your rental, flying, gas. Adult leaders to come on your mission trip. Are you going to ask that adult leaders pay for themselves and cost their students? Does your youth ministry is your dollars? We're going to think through some budget. Think through is, what is your youth ministry budget, or do you have a youth ministry budget? Is your youth ministry budget able to partially pay for students that come on the trip, or make up for any gaps that you might have with fundraising if you don't have enough students sign up? Another important thing to think about as you're creating a budget is, when are you going to be making payments? So if you're working with YouthWorks, we have a payment plan that has different payments throughout the year, with a deposit, a mid-payment, and a final payment, depending on when you register. So thinking through and making sure that your budget aligns with the payment plan of when you have to pay certain fees, and then also think about when you're going to be collecting money from students. Some churches I know will collect like money up front and say, hey, here, pay a deposit, and then collect monthly payments, so you're not asking for several $100s from families at once or in May, right before the mission trip. And so just think about those things as you are creating your budget. A few tips, Carlos, you can go to the next slide. A few tips to help you save money potentially is if you're working with an organization, it's often helpful to register early. This will give you the best options for sites and locations, but also typically organizations like YouthWorks have the best deals at the beginning of like the registration season. Also, think about filling every seat in your rental vehicle. I know that's typically when I was registering for a mission trip or working with the church, we were thinking through, okay, if we're renting vehicles, we think maybe we can fill 4 vehicles. And so that's how many seats are in the 4 rental vehicles. That's 28 spaces. How many adult leaders are going to be there? So, okay, I can have about 22 students sign up or whatnot. And so think through filling every seat of your rental vehicle. If your church has a van or a bus, or if you're just going to rent a 15-passenger van, think through those things so you can spread out the cost as evenly and as much as possible. Another money-saving hack is packing meals for along the way, whether it's packing lunches instead of stopping at a sit-down restaurant. That adds up, especially as you have more students come on the trip. If funds are tight, choose a destination closer to home so you don't have as large of travel cost. And then also think through the extras for your mission trip. So whether it's if you want to do a fun activity on the way there or the way home, or if you're wanting to get shirts for your students, oftentimes it's easier to include those in the costs up front that you're charging your students and going back and asking for money. You're trying to find that money in your budget. So the next thing to think about is your transportation. So how are you going to get to your location? Transportation can make or break an experience. So think about if you're driving, how many drivers can you get to go on your mission trip? And think about your church policies. So how many drivers you need for every vehicle? Are there limitations on how long someone can drive or how many miles or hours someone can drive in a day? Can you drive on nights? I know when I was a youth leader, we had to have 2 drivers for every vehicle. We couldn't drive more than 8 hours a day. We had to stop after a certain number of hours for a break, and breaks had to be X amount of number of minutes or hours long, depending on what type of stop it was. So start thinking through those logistics as vehicles and transportation. It can be somewhat complicated. As you're thinking through vehicles, think through, does your church have a vehicle that you can take? Are you planning on renting vehicles? Are you going to ask people to drive their personal vehicles? It's often important to look into your insurance policies too, of what will your church's insurance cover, and what policies do they have in place. If you're flying, call your airlines, because typically you can get a better group rate and call it a group rate. And often if you're working with a group booking, you have more flexibility, whether it's changing names on tickets if students or adult leaders are changing. They can also help and make sure to keep everyone on the flight. Other helpful things that I've experienced working with lots of churches, oftentimes your budget airlines maybe aren't your best option when you're going on a mission trip. Things like baggage fees add up on those budget airlines. And oftentimes too, if your travel is interrupted, whether it's due to weather or mechanical issues, those budget airlines might only have 1 flight a day versus your larger airlines have several flights that you can easily get rebooked, because it's not just you rebooking yourself, it's you potentially rebooking yourself and 25 other people as you're going. And so just think through those things as you are choosing flights. Another hack for airlines is flying into larger cities can often be more cost effective. So that might mean you're driving a little bit further once to get to your final destination, but flying into larger airports can save money as well. Another thing to also think through is if you are flying, most likely you will need to rent vehicles once you arrive or once you've landed. And so oftentimes it's more cost effective to rent vehicles off-site from an airport. So is there an airport shuttle that you and an adult leader could take to go and pick up your rental vehicles and leave your students and other trusted adult leaders at the airport and then go back and pick them up, so you're not paying the fees to rent vehicles from the airport. Remember, travel time is part of your mission trip. It's part of your ministry time, and really use it for team bonding, devotions, and the discipleship of your students. So the next important piece of planning your mission trip is planning your service projects. And so if you're going on a YouthWorks mission trip, we will take care of this piece of your mission trip. So we'll be planning it, this element for you. But if you're planning your own mission trip, here are some helpful tips. So first, think about what kind of service best fits your group. Are you looking for relational projects? So think about when we talk about relational projects, so working with kids, whether it's at like a local Boys and Girls Club, a Salvation Army, a local church doing VBS, serving like the elderly, going and visiting at elderly care facilities or adult daycares, having conversations with people maybe at a food pantry or soup kitchen, sitting down and having conversations with people. Oftentimes, we might not feel like we're doing a lot when we're serving relationally, but relational service can be just as impactful, slowing down and having those conversations and spending time with people. The other type of service that YouthWorks trips we often focus on is tangible service. So think of like your work projects, so painting, minor home repair, yard cleanup, repairs, hands-on projects. Maybe it's going to a food bank and sorting through donations, going to a thrift store and helping sort through their donations, things of that nature where students are really getting their hands dirty. And so often at YouthWorks, we like to provide both a relational service experience during the mission trip as well as a tangible service experience. So that might look like serving 2 days somewhere and then 2 days somewhere else. We know students respond differently to the different types of service, and we want to make sure that each student and adult leader gets both of those experiences. Another type of service that you might look at planning as well as doing outreach and evangelization. So as you're thinking through that, what are you hoping that your students will learn is an important thing to think through, and how that you can serve the community, and how your students might articulate their own faith and how they can share their own faith during that time. Really, the heart of your trip is service. And so choosing projects that match both your group's abilities as well as that will help them grow in their faith and empathy is really important. If you're planning your own trip, it's often important to build relationships early with local nonprofits and local community leaders. A huge part of YouthWorks mission trips is respectful service. Carlos will touch on that a bit, but to us, it's just as important to have those relationships with those community leaders and serve alongside of them and those local nonprofits. We like to remind students that really service isn't about fixing, it's about learning, it's about connecting, and it's about humility. Often we can learn as much from our community partners and our friends that we're serving, and take away just as much as we're serving as well. So as part of your service day and as part of volunteering, it's important to ask your students and ask some important questions of like, what are you hoping that they learn? How can we serve the community and serve with the community, not for it? And then as you're processing with students, ask things like, where did you see God today? Like, how did serving change your perspective? How can we apply these things back home? That's really our ultimate hope with any mission trip, whether it's a YouthWorks trip or you're planning a trip on your own, that you can take some of these things back home and your students can take some of these concepts that they've learned or the ways that they've served back home and apply them to their everyday lives. So the last logistic that I'm going to talk about is setting up lodging. So again, if you're going on a YouthWorks trips, during your actual trip, we have your lodging taken care of. So we'll have that set up for you, but you might have to plan lodging as you're traveling, if you're doing like a 2-day drive or whatnot, or if you're planning your own mission trip, this can be really helpful. So think through the types of accommodations that you might want to look for for your students and adult leaders. So great places to start for when you're looking for lodging is local churches, schools, community centers in the area that you're serving. Some things to think through if you're going to go one of these routes is thinking through like the comfort of your students and the privacy levels that you're looking for. Oftentimes, you'll be sleeping in like classrooms, or you might sleep in a gym with like a tarp dividing it. Other things to ask for if you're staying in accommodations like this is make sure to ask for kitchen access. Because like that's a cost savings mechanism that whether you're preparing your own meals during the mission trip there, or even if you're there just for one night, if you're preparing your own food, like for breakfast the next morning before you get on the road, that can save you money. You also will like need to find showers. Some churches will have showers there, or community centers or schools will have showers on site. Other great places to look for showers are like local community centers, YMCAs, gyms, colleges, universities. And this is where, again, going back to budgeting is important. If you're housing at a church, some churches might say, hey, we have a flat fee per person that we're asking you to pay per night. Or they might just say, hey, make us a donation in this amount. They might also just graciously let you stay at their church for free for a night. And so churches in a community, or even along the way, if you're doing a 2-day drive, churches are. I often recommend people start with churches within your own denomination, as there's some relation there and connection, but identify a city or an area and just start reaching out to churches, making phone calls to whether it's the youth leader, the pastor, can go and you can make significant headway with that when you're looking for housing. You can also look for hotels too, depending on the accommodations that you're looking for, and depending on your comfortability in your students. Again, as you're thinking through housing, think through things like, do we need our own space? What does our adult and youth safety policies and procedures say with where adult and youth are sleeping? And think it through some of those accommodations that you're going to need when you're making those plans. So I'm going to pass it back to Carlos. I just want to encourage you all. You got this when you're planning your mission trip, but also we are here for you. We're here to support you. Our trip specialist team, if you're doing a YouthWorks trip, do not hesitate to reach out to us. We're here to walk alongside you through this process. If you're not doing a YouthWorks trip though, and you love to connect with us, reach out to us. We have helpful tips like this that we can offer, and we can give you our advice too, as we've worked with a number of churches. So thanks, guys.
I don't know about you guys, but I know for me as a pastor and somebody who's, led and been on trips like this, I don't tend to be a logistics person. This is normally not my specialty. That's why I love Barry and our whole team, because they're so great at all the logistics and making all the aspects of these trips work. But something that can tend to happen is we get so focused on all of the logistical aspects and just making sure we can get the trip out the door and making sure all the details are in order, especially if we're controlling all of that ourselves, that we forget that at the end of the day, this is a very human and a very spiritual exercise. Like, going on a mission trip is a spiritual endeavor, and it's an endeavor where you're going to interact with people, and people are being changed and people are being transformed in the process of this. And if that's true, part of the planning and part of the preparation is not just in the logistics, but is preparing us as people to be able to go, and preparing our hearts and our minds for what we're going to experience. And so some of the things that I'd really encourage you to make sure that you have time on the calendar or meetings set up to do is to walk your group through these different aspects of the experience, to prepare them for this, preparing them for what it looks like to serve respectfully, teaching them what respectful service looks like. We're going to do an entire other webinar here in a few months just around respectful service to help you go and communicate that downline to your groups, but they should understand that not just when they show up, but before they show up. Contextual training. What is the type of community that you're entering into? What is the history of that community or that city or that town? What's it going to be like? And making sure your group understands that before you show up on the ground. Cultural competence. Helping your group understand your own culture and everybody's own backgrounds. And then trying to understand a little bit about like their background. And because every time you go to a new community, there is a level of cross-cultural experience because every community is not the same. And then you need to make sure you set expectations. You need to prepare everybody for what to expect on the trip, both from rules, guidelines, policies of that trip, and all the logistics that have to happen that Barry talked about and gave some tips on. They need to know some of those things too beforehand. So don't just wait until the end to make sure these things are in order. Begin preparing those in advance to have the best trip you can possible. And then the last part is spiritual preparation. Your group needs to be prepared spiritually for what's going to happen on that trip. And so I put some examples of some different prayer efforts or some different ways that your group might schedule and prepare yourself spiritually. Prayer walks. Prayer walks are not something that you could just do on your mission trip, but you could begin training and doing with your group beforehand. And then maybe, that happens on a mission trip. Jericho prayer, that's a concept of 7 days. And so maybe the 7 days before your trip, your group gets on a phone call or a Zoom meeting, or maybe you're able to get together physically together for those 7 days to make sure that there's consistent prayer before you go on that trip. Another way to do that would be wilderness. This is based off of Jesus going into the wilderness for 40 days. Pick a day every week where the group gets together, either digitally or in person, to have a specific day for multiple weeks that the group is getting together and praying. Maybe even consider training or introducing your students to fasting on each of those days so that there's that time spiritually that they're preparing their hearts. And they enter that community looking for God in that community and how he's already working and how he's already operating there. And if you prepare spiritually, their eyes are going to be more open to see where God is moving if they were prepared maybe in some of these ways. And then look at your teaching. Is there maybe a sermon series or a curriculum or something you need to do in a class that would help people with some content before they show up on that mission trip as well? Maybe looking at the book of Acts, or looking at what the Bible says about loving your neighbor, what the Bible says about service before they even show up inside of that community. I know that this is a lot of stuff. Like, there are a lot of logistics to plan, a lot of things to prepare to go on a mission trip. And that's, one of the main reasons we're here is to be able to help you to make this possible. This was a lot. And so we're going to send this to you in an email. We'll send you this slide deck and a video of this. But also we have some other resources that are available on our website and resources. We can put links to these as well. We have a planning a mission trip guidebook that has a lot of the points that we talked about inside of there. We have a whole guidebook on what respectful service means and what that looks like, and fundraising. Again, we know that money is a big piece of this as well. And so want to make sure that if you are fundraising, that maybe you have some best practices and ideas from other groups who have done that. So all of those resources are both available for free on our website. We'll also email those out to you. Before we close, I had a question for Barry. If anybody else has a question, feel free to pop it in. But Barry, when you think about money, one of my big questions is, you talk to a lot of groups, how much money tends to get added on top of trip costs? I know it's totally different, based off of how far they're traveling, but
Yeah.
Is there like a grid? I know our trips, our prepackaged trips, have a price, but what tends to get added for transportation, food on the way,
Yeah.
other expenses the church might have? What do you tend to hear in that arena?
Yeah, I would say, so our average trip right now is $469 per person. And I would say, talking with our trip leaders, on average, most groups are charging somewhere between like $750 to $850 per person. So adding about $300 to $400 on top of the registration fee. So, and the things to think about with that are, what is your transportation cost and how do you break that out amongst your participants? I mentioned this earlier, but who is covering your adult leaders? I know a lot of churches will like break down the adult leader costs among their students. If you don't have a youth budget, or you're not having significant fundraising efforts that can cover your adult leaders. But then, yeah, then travel on the way there and home. I know some groups like to stay in like a hotel on the day after the mission trip if you're coming specifically on a YouthWorks trip. If your church going to cover meals for your students on the way there, and the way home, if food is not provided, whatnot. So yeah, think through those costs. But I would say on average, it's about anywhere from $300 to $400 per person if you're driving.
What do you as the team talks to all these different churches, and we have hundreds of churches that come on trips with us, what do you think the biggest question is around logistics that you guys get? Or what do you think the logistical, I don't know, hang up is of some groups or trip leaders?
Yeah, I would say one of the biggest logistical questions that I often talk through with trip leaders, and we didn't really touch on this today, but is when it comes to registration, if you're going to work with an organization like YouthWorks, how many people to register for? And so there's a few helpful things that I like to think on, and I think about, and I touched on this a little bit earlier when I was talking about transportation. But one, think about your transportation. How many seats are in your vehicles, and how many seat belts? So that's a good place to start when you're thinking about number to register for. Think about too, with the other programming that you do throughout the year, how many students are coming and actively participating in those, whether it's a retreat, whether it's a lot, or nights. You really get to participate in experiences like that, or if you go to camp, and then think about like for your regular, really involved is your core group, you can trust on to be there every week, and start with those, and say start with conversations with whether it's other people at your church, if you have a large church staff, whether it's your other core adult leaders, or even your students. Start getting interest before you register. Oftentimes too, if you're working with an organization like YouthWorks, if you're registering early, you're going to have some of the most flexibility in your numbers. So for instance, if you were to register for a YouthWorks trip today, you could register for 25 spaces, and 2 months from today, you could come back to us and say, hey, I only have 12 people registered. I want to change my numbers. And you're not going to have any penalties. And so there is flexibility. But yeah, I would say where to start with numbers is one of the biggest logistical things that we help guide churches through.
That makes sense. Thanks, Barry. Like Barry said earlier, our team is here to help you out. So if you have questions, if this is, which it can be overwhelming, there's a lot of things going on in preparing a trip like this. That's why we're here. So reach out to us. We'd love to help you walk you through the process. And at the end of the day, want to make it possible for you, for your students to have a life-altering experience like a mission trip. So thank you guys. We are planning to do these webinars about once a month. And so you'll see more coming out soon, and we'll email you soon with some of these resources. Thank you guys.